Introducing Francois Laurin. He is the Chief Financial Officer at Alderon. Mr. Laurin held several senior management positions in Canada before joining Alderon, including that of Chief Financial Officer of Consolidated Thompson Iron Mines Limited, which was acquired for $4.9 billion by Cliffs Natural Resources in 2011. Sounds like quite a deal. I wish I'd been aware of it and gotten in on that. Most recently, he was the president and CEO of CapEx Iron Ore Limited and CFO of Copper One Inc. He is currently a member of the board of directors of CapEx Iron Ore Limited, Copper One Inc., and Mason Graphite Inc. Francois Laurin.
Thank you very much. Bonjour, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity for Alderon to present its project. And let me entertain you for 15 minutes. You've read this. Anything I say can be held against me. What sets Alderon Iron Ore apart? Alderon is an iron ore project. We're in the development stage. We haven't started construction. We're 2014 should bring construction, the beginning of construction, so that by 2016 we start producing and shipping iron ore. But what this sets us apart? Clearly, on the partners' point of view, we have two very patient and strong partners in Hebei Steel. Hebei Steel is the biggest Chinese steel makers, third in the world. They acquired 25% in the project and 20% at the corporate level. I'll get back to that. Liberty Metals and Mining. This is a subsidiary of Liberty Insurance out of Boston, very big firm. They've been here since 2012. Management, capable team. We've got a very strong team of operators. We're operators. We plan to bring this mine into production to be a sustainable, profitable iron ore mine in Labrador for years to come. Many of our staff and senior management have had lots of experience in the field, iron ore, in Labrador, many of them at IOC Iron Ore of Canada for years. In fact, we had the three senior people who were there when IOC set production records, which they haven't reached since then. So we know the area, we know the sector, and we have experienced people to deal with communities, regulators, financial partners, and government. Location, those who were there earlier for the other presentation may have seen that iron ore project, you're dependent on infrastructure, port, rail, and power. Well, in Labrador, this is very safe, stable jurisdiction. Long history, Iron Ore Canada, ArcelorMittal, and Wabush Mines have been there for 50 years and more. We're the biggest one now to open a new mine in the Labrador, in the iron ore sector, Hydropower is available, I'll get back to that, and there's access to skilled labor. There's a lot of people, there's over 15,000 people living there. There are young retirees from Wabush and IOC that are available, are working, and might be, this is a pool of talent. We also have, there's a lot of, many people are commuting from Newfoundland to the Great West Canadian to work in the oil and sand. This is another pool of talent that we plan to approach in the months to come. Infrastructure, we talk about power, rail, port, but we're very close to the rail, only 15 kilometers, and this is a common carrier, so it's not a question as if we will have access to the facilities, is when we sign a deal with the carriers. Common carriers, by definition, in Canada, contrary to places like Australia, they have to carry your product on the rail, and there's a process, if you don't get an agreement, to go to an arbitration, and within 60 days you have a decision. So it's not something that's going to be lingering forever. The voltage grid is only 15 kilometers away, and we have secured the access to the Sitsil port, and I'll go through that. Basically, we have a measured and indicated 1.3 billion tons, proven and probable 658 million tons. At 8 million tons a year, that's our initial production plan. Output, we could be there for at least 30 years, and that's only on the 656 million, so half of the measured and indicated. People talk about steel, they talk about the volatility of iron ore. These two slides very quickly, you see that in the years 2001, 2011, China, $500 million of the increase in tonnage came from them. People say it's going to slow down, it's going to slow down. Well, in 2012 to 21, I don't call that too much of a slowdown, clearly close to another 500 million tons, 5 billion tons of ore, 5 million tons. So the growth in steel, we believe, and that's why you have major players also in the trough, including Hebe, who's joined our project. I'll go fast on this, just to give you a sense of the population of rural versus urban in China. So you see the growth in the urban population, and then when you combine this with the steel intensity, like how much steel of consumption of steel is required for people in the urban areas. So we don't feel that there's going to be much of a slowdown, maybe in percentages, but growth-wise, gross margin-wise, there's going to be still growth in Asia and China. You can see there that over another 2 billion additional people will come to urban cities in years to come. Besides Beijing and China, you should expect over 100 towns and cities, over 1 million people shortly. That being said, now people talk about the iron ore price being volatile. Yes, it's mostly now on a spot market or close to. The yearly pricing is gone. And then you've got more hedging and speculation on the commodity. It's not like gold yet, but you've got the USA, China, and Singapore are trying to establish exchanges to take forward contracts and option contracts on this. So there is volatility, but the price is still very healthy today, over $122 per ton of steel for the 62% Fe benchmark. I talked about previously about our partners. Hebe invested over $182 million, Liberty 49, and Altius at 25% is the originator of the exploration program for this project. The Hebe came in, put $120 million in the project, and what it's secured with this is 60% of the output going forward for at least the first tranche is for 15 years. They have a right to get more, but the first 60% is really the spot price, less the Platts, we call, less a 5% discount, which is normal, given the fact that they came in at the time when we didn't have a feasibility done. We only have a PEA, and they put 120 million for 25%. So they're very patient, and the way the deal is organized is that they will help us find debt facility, and the more debt facility we get, the less investment they will have to make for in the first phase. And I'll explain to you later why we believe it works very well. The capital structure, over 130 million shares, basically just short of $2 lately, but almost $2. So market cap of over $200 million, $100 million in the bank. And you see that we have a shareholding base of 60% in the hands of 3 people who are patient. One of the characteristics of Alderon, to have been able to go through the recent highs and especially lows in the iron ore public market, is that these partners allowed us to not have gone to the public markets since December 2010. And we're about to raise $1 billion in project financing. Here is you see wherever it's red or an asterisk, it's either an iron ore experience or a IOC experience. We've got plenty. We're followed by many analysts. You know where, I don't have to explain to you where we're situated, but we're next to all the major infrastructure. We'll have access with our the power, once we sign the power purchase agreement, to very low cost, and that's what a differentiator that we have here in Canada versus the other iron ore producers in the world. The port facility, the new jetty that you see here is almost complete. It's planned to be complete in 2014, so well in time for our project to start delivering. You will have Cape-sized vessel up to 250,000 tons, be able to being loaded there, and for 50 million tons a year. Power, we mentioned, obviously, for those of you in the St. John's and in Newfoundland, Labrador area, you heard my chairman speaking last week you may have heard our chairman speaking at the Board of Trade last week. We're waiting, basically, we're waiting for that decision of the provincial government to grant the construction of the third line from Churchill's to Lab West, and then we will be set to start construction. 1.3 billion capex, $42 a ton, that puts us in the middle of the pack. In China, you've got 120, and then you've got the low 30s for what we call the DSO, the direct shipping ore. Very competitive with our neighbors. IOC, in fact, the flow sheet that we have is identical to IOC. It's the same area with very low deleterious element. So you see that the phosphorus and alumina is very low, and this is sought after. This is not the coincidence that you have the ArcelorMittal, the Rio Tinto, the Minmetal, the Wisco, the Hebe of this world investing in Labrador Trough. The quality of the ore is, I'll say fantastic. I'm not a geologist nor a mining engineer, but I can tell you that the customers love it and has very good qualities when they put this in their blast furnace. We talk about communities. We've been set as an example in the way we did our consultation. We got the EA release from the provincial government. Now we're waiting for the federal one. The consultation is over. They're drafting. February is the deadline to get the last release from the Canadian Environmental Agency. The impact of this project in the province, it's going to be $12 billion invested over 30 years. That's only only for the first phase. If we go to phase 2 to go to 16 million, that's going to be more. 39,000 total person years, 2.7 billion of income and employees in the region, with 25 billion going to the GDP of the province, with clearly almost 4 billion of taxes in the coffers of the province. So you see here the skew, basically Newfoundland versus the rest of the country, and Quebec a bit, because we're investing close to 200 million for our facility at Sept-Îles. So you see the number of employees, basically, over in construction phase, over 1,000 people, and 14,000 provincially during the operation phase, person years. We've signed recently agreements with the city of Labrador, the Labrador City. We're negotiating with Wabush City. We have an agreement, we signed a major IBA with the Innu Nation of Labrador again in the last few months. We have another community participation agreement with Nunavik in 2012. We've consulted and discussed with every group that affected by our project and in the various communities. Basically, what's next? The power decision to build the third line to come to Lab City, the federal release, and then after it's to complete the financing. I told you earlier, the Chinese have had an impact. We're about to raise $1 billion of bank debt at the project level. I don't think you find that too many companies in this world, especially in Canada, to be able to raise $1 billion outside Canada. And the Chinese are very will be a big factor in participating in this. And then the second offtake, we're negotiating also with major off-takers, European and Asian, to sell the less 40%. So 1.3 billion, 60% of debt, 60 to 65% of debt, the rest in equity. But as you may have seen the news lately, we're about to embark on new news. You should expect the next news is to have the permit, the financing, and constructions to start before the Q3 of this year. On this note, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Francois. Next up, we have Dr. Rob Nixon, Chair of Nunavik, Kautaapikkut Mining Strategy Table. Rob is a Senior Associate with Universalia Management Group in Montreal, has over 25 years' experience working with First Nations and Inuit communities and other organizations, developing and implementing Aboriginal employment and training strategies and action plans, education reform, and human resource development strategies. Rob has also worked internationally in over 30 countries on education reform as well as long-term employment and human resource development strategies. Rob Nixon.
Thanks very much, Scott. It's a real pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you very much for coming. And I'd also like to introduce a friend and a colleague of mine who's sitting right next to me, Mr. Mark Lucas, who's the Director of Human Resources for Raglan, and very happily he was able to be here today and to be part of the presentation. So a little bit later, I'm going to call on him and he's going to speak to some specific areas of the presentation. So thank you very much, Mark, for being part of that. So I'd like to talk about an Inuit mining company partnership in Nunavik. And this is a new initiative. It's one that is a different kind of project and partnership than has existed in the past, because there are 5 Inuit partners and 3 mining companies so far, and over the next number of years we'll add to the number of mining companies that will be part of that. So for us, this is a new chapter in the development of the mining sector and employment for Inuit people. Just a brief overview of the presentation. There are 7 or 8 key parts of the presentation. I want to talk about what the strategy is, who are the partners, what's a bit of the background to this, why is this strategy important to the Nunavik region and to Nunavik people, what are the key objectives, and what have we done so far. So that's the overview. The overall strategic objective, the main purpose of this table is to, as it says, significantly grow the size of the Inuit labor force working in the mining sector over the next 5 to 10 years, but we can extend that. We're thinking 5 to 10, but certainly this could include the next 15 or 20. Mark will talk to, for example, the life of mine for the Raglan mine, just one of the major mines in Nunavik. And the other key point here, I think that's very important, is that this strategy table has thought to look not just at the producing mines and how we can maximize Inuit employment in each one of the mines in Nunavik, but in the exploration phase and in the construction phase of each one of that, how can we do better than we have in the past and continue to grow and continuously improve over the next 5, 10, 15, or 20 years. So we're beginning with a 2.5-year phase, which goes from 2013 to 2015. That's already in place, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And then we're in the process now of planning the next phase, which will start in 2015. So a short, intermediate, and long-term perspective on how we can do this. Inuit partners. There are 5, as I mentioned, including the Kautaapikkut Regional Government, the Sustainable Employment and Development Department, which, as many of you may know, has been in existence for a long time and has a long history of being able to provide funds and support for Inuit employment in a whole variety of areas in Nunavik, and has had a major role in the development of mining employment over the last 10 or 15 years. Makivik Corporation, obviously many of you know that. Makivik amongst the many other things it does. It is one of the key signatories with the mining companies of the IBAs, along with the local communities. It's critical to have them at the table. Thirdly, the Landholding Corporation Association, which makes up all of the landholding corporations of the 14 different communities, and many of those landholding corporations also in their capacity sign IBAs with the mining companies as well. Critical to have them at the table. The Mineral Exploration Fund, critical organization that looks at the ways in which we can work closely with the exploration companies. And finally, the Kautaapikkut School Board, Inuit-controlled school board, as many of you may know of, which has an adult education and vocational training arm. The other key partners, the mining companies, include Raglan, Canadian Royalties. Matt Raglan's been in our operation, as many of you will know, for about 18 years. It's about 1996. A lot of experience and a lot of really important advances that Raglan has made over those number of years in Inuit employment in Nunavik. Canadian Royalties, another nickel mine which began in production this past year, and Oceanic Iron Ore, which is also an exploration company. And just in passing, I think that we're hoping that Quest Minerals, Mr. Cashin spoke about his operation. We hope in the near future at some point that he will join this group as well as they develop that mine in more detail. What's the background and the progress to date? Well, just very briefly, you can see that we've been in the process of getting this going for the last 2 years. Initial discussions with all the partners to make sure that everybody was on side with the vision and with the concept through the first half of 2012. The second half of 2012, where we produced an initial strategy amongst all the partners. We all worked together to do that and planned a budget where everybody was contributing in one way or another. And then in the last year of 2013, what we were able to do was to finalize the strategy, to sign agreements with both the federal and provincial government for money to assist all the other partners, and to begin implementation about 7 or 8 months ago in May of 2013. So we started a while ago. Why is the strategy important? Again, similar to the situation in parts of northern Labrador, Nunavik, as well as in Nunavik, as you'll know, there is a projection that is a conservative projection now that there's a possibility in the next 5 to 10 years of an additional, or of a total of 4,000 jobs that would be available in the mining sector in Nunavik. Huge. And that's including in the producing mines, the construction sites, and also in the exploration work as well. As many of you know, the population of Nunavik is 12,000, so there is a kind of a major challenge here in terms of figuring out how we can create jobs. The current number of Inuit employed in the mining sector, largely in Raglan and in Canadian Royalties, is something in the order of 200 to 230, so we have a long way to go, obviously. Major challenge. Further challenge is, again, many of you will be familiar with this kind of situation where there is a significantly high dropout rate in Nunavik, something like a 90 to 95% dropout rate from kindergarten to grade 11. Major challenge, but something that we're working on, and a relatively low level of graduates in both the trades and the college and university sector. That has been improving over the last 10 or 15 years significantly, but there's still a long way to go. So there are 8 different components to the strategy overall. As I've said, the key one, the one that's at the center, the one that we're working feverishly towards, is to significantly grow the size of the Inuit labor force in the mining sector in Nunavik over the next number of years, with a priority on women and youth. So that's the centerpiece. What are the other pieces? There are 7 other pieces. One, we want to continue to build and strengthen the partnership. That is the key piece. If the partnership works, there is a great deal that we can do. We've already seen that there's been a significant, very positive experience working with Raglan Mine over the last 16 years with the Inuit partners. We want to build on that with all the others. The The third component, again, as many of you will know, is how we can continue to build continuously the training capacity to be able to train people in the mining sector, not only in the mine sites themselves. Off the sites, there's already a regional vocational and training center. We want to build significantly on that. We want to build on e-learning. We want to figure out a whole range of ways that we can work with a variety of training partners to multiply, to build hugely that capacity as quickly as possible. Number 4, I'll do 4, 5, and 6 together because all of those are connected. First one, the 4th strategy is we want to make sure that before people are hired, before Inuit are hired, that there is a very good recruitment, selection, and training process prior to employment. We've already done a lot of work in this area. We want to continuously improve that. One of the things that we've done in the last 5 years is to say we don't need people who have secondary 5 or grade 11. We need people who are motivated, who have some work experience, who want to work. Maybe they have a secondary 1, a secondary 2, a secondary 3. We'll find a way to train them. We know how to do that, so that we want to continue to build on that success so far. Number 5 is a whole range of things, including how we build together a way of combining essential skill training and trade skill training and technical training and a whole variety of other trainings. My colleague, Mr. Lucas, is going to be speaking about a program that also helps Inuit to move from the trades, from the entry-level jobs, even from the technical jobs, into the management, into the training kinds of roles that are helping people to move to more responsible and senior positions. So there's a lot of experience that we've had so far, and we're going to continue. Number 6, the strengthen the process to promote and retain Inuit employees. Critical piece again that Mark will work on. Number 7 is that we also want to work with the schools, with the school board, with all the local partners, with the parents and the communities to make sure that we can increase the educational results so that there aren't the level of dropout rate in Nunavik. And lastly, the 8th part of the strategy is to continually assess the results and improve. I'm going to move along here. How are we implementing the plan? We're working on each one of these objectives. We're regularly meeting and sharing results about how we're doing, how we can help each other, how we can learn from each other's experience, how we can learn from best practices. The partners together, and I think this is really significant, the partners together are contributing over that 2.5-year period of about in excess of $40 million, which is very significant. About 66% of that comes from the mining companies themselves, about 13% from the Inuit partners, also significant, and about 20% or so from the federal and provincial governments. This is the target for employment over the next 2.5 years. These are new jobs, so 430 new jobs in the mining sector. In order to get at that, we want to train something in excess of 1,000 people, but that is a significant increase just over 2.5 years, and our goal is to incrementally increase that number over the next 5 years. And I'd ask Mark if you could speak about specifically Raglan, please, just for a few minutes.
Thank you. I'll start off by just correcting Rob. Raglan's been in operations for 15 years. We've been counting construction in 18, 20 years. But in operations, we're actually celebrating our 15th year right now. I'll also just mention right off the bat, in terms of Inuit employment, I don't think that Raglan has been perfect, although I think that we're going in the right direction. In 2008, we started a program called Taamatamani, which in direct translation means, and correct me for those who are here who understand Inuktitut, but better the next time. So we're going to do better this time, second time around. At that time, in 2008, we had roughly 70% turnover with our Inuit workforce, and about 70 actually Inuit employees for the company as well as for contractors. Since then, we've reduced our turnover to a little over 20% turnover, and we've boosted employment to 170 people on site, 170 Inuit employees. So we're certainly going in the right direction. And last year, we, as part of what we call Taamatamani 2, or what now commonly referred to as RIDE, RIDE's a new program that we've developed in 2013, stands for Rapid Inuit Development and Employment. Some of the bases for the RIDE program, Rob Nixon touched on. One, there's absolutely no need for any kind of technical education or training to advance. But the RIDE program has two phases. One, we've identified the highly motivated and talented Inuit who are on site that do want to move up into further positions, had one-on-one interviews with them, found out what it is that they want to do, and have instituted a series of, whether they're psychological tests or coaching or interviews, to find out what skills they're lacking to move up to the next level. So, we currently have Inuit working at 26 different positions, although most of those positions would be entry-level positions. Everything from obviously in our wait staff or our complex staff, but also we have welders. We've had some successes over the last couple of years. We've had our first fully trained underground Inuit development miner, who was the top dog from development miners. We've also last year got our first female underground Inuit stope school student. So we have a stope school that lasts 2 years underground, and our first female started last year. Which, to all the guys here, I'm sorry, but women make much better operators than men do, so I'm sure that she'll have a lot of success. And I can say that because before I was in HR, I was the underground mine manager for 5 years. And I think I did something wrong or right, depending on how you look at it, and I ended up in HR. So the first phase is to identify the people that are within, and obviously work with them individually, with their individual development plans, to see what it takes to get them to the next level and promote them from within. Parts of the successes that we've had people who may know Siasi Kanerjuak, who is now, we've got an Inuit, very high potential a woman who is actually head of our hiring department for other Inuits. We've had Kimberly Makiak, who's moved into an actual HR role without having the formal qualifications. The list goes on and on, so we're having some successes there. And then the second part of the RIDE program is actually establishing contacts with with 74 Inuit from Nunavik district, who are studying down south in either trades, college, or university. So that's ongoing. So we can recruit them into higher level positions. And since I see that there's a 1 minute, very well thrown at me, I had a couple of other things to say, but unfortunately I'll let Rob Nixon continue. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mark, and we're going to get going. Exactly. So, just 2 more slides. What's the support that's offered by the Kautaapikkut strategy table? There's a significant set of financial potential benefits for mining companies that are working, both wage and benefits for Inuit trainees and for trainers. There is training along with Kautaapikkut School Board. There's a number of different programs that are offered there, and a whole set of specific shared successes, best practices, and other kinds of ways in which the partners work together, look specifically at the ways that there are a series of challenges and how we can all work together to create a win-win for everybody. And there is kind of an ongoing R&D component to this whole thing, where we're looking consistently and constantly at best practices in Inuit employment and development in the mining sector across the country, in Alaska, in other parts of the world. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you, Mark, for your presentation. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rob and Mark. We're definitely just scratching the surface here. I hope you guys have your questions ready when these guys are finished. Next up, we have Tom Peregoodoff, the Executive Vice President of Business Development at Peregrine Diamonds. Mr. Peregoodoff has over 25 years of mining and petroleum industry experience, including 18 years with BHP Billiton. Prior to joining Peregrine in January 2012, Mr. Peregoodoff was Vice President, Early Stage Exploration at BHP Billiton. He was also a member of the Minerals Exploration Executive Committee that set long-term strategy and direction for BHP Billiton's Mineral Exploration Division. Prior to this, he held several senior roles in BHP Billiton's Exploration Division. He has been director of a number of BHP Billiton-owned entities and has extensive global exploration, operations, and business development experience. Tom Peregoodoff.
get started, I just want to take the opportunity to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak to you guys today about Peregrine Diamonds and our Chidliak Diamond Project up on Baffin Island. Next. Second thing, I just want to remind everybody, I will be speaking about future events and I will be making forward-looking statements. So if you are tweeting anything, please include this in your tweets. Liz, I'm looking at you. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Peregrine Diamonds. I'll give you Diamonds 101, and that is from a geophysicist perspective, so it will be fairly basic. Talk about Chidliak, and talk about the latest development in the project, which is the results of our bulk sample that we took in April of this year. Give you guys a bit of a view of what the future might look like for Chidliak and some of the potential economic benefits. I then want to take some time and talk about infrastructure, not necessarily specific to the project, but more our perspective on some infrastructure challenges that we all share working in the north, and then wrap up. We've been operating since 2003. The company was founded by Eric Friedland. It was started as an alliance between BHP Billiton and Eric, and the sole purpose at the time was to deploy the Falcon airborne geophysical technology that BHP had developed at the time. We've been public since 2006, and since going public, we've raised over $150 million for exploration and development for diamond deposits, primarily in the Arctic of Canada. We've got over 100 years of diamond exploration experience within the group, and Peregrine and its team members have been responsible for the discovery of 3 kimberlite districts in Canada. The experience extends all the way through the company. We've got a very experienced board. We've got Robert Boyd, some of you may know, was the CEO of Ashton when they discovered the Renard diamond deposit in Quebec. Experienced management, myself, 18 years, the last 4 with BHP running their global exploration in Singapore. Brooke Clements worked with Rob and discovered the Renard cluster. And our biggest shareholders are, known mine financiers. We've got Robert Friedland's on our registry, as well as Ned Goodman. What you're looking at is some diamonds from our CH6 bulk sample. I'll talk a bit more about that and show you guys some more photos of some diamonds in a minute. Before we do get into that, just make sure everybody's on the same page as far as what is a diamond deposit. I think most people know they're the world's hardest substance. They're formed very deep within the earth, where there's tremendous pressure and heat. Volcanoes called kimberlites erupt from these tremendous depths and bring the diamonds with them up to the surface. They're extremely rare. Kimberlites are very rare, and diamondiferous kimberlites with economic potential are even rare. In fact, only about 1% of the known kimberlites globally have got the appropriate combination of grade and value to be economic. Oh, just let me go back. As I've said, we've had an Arctic focus. We've evaluated approximately, over 30 projects, diamond projects in Canada. You can see the vast majority of those has been in the Arctic, and we've got a real Nunavik focus. 60% of the work we've done to date has been in Nunavik. We like the Arctic, and we do believe in the tremendous potential that it does contain. Currently, our portfolio contains 5 active projects. We've got DO27, which is in the Northwest Territories in the Lac de Gras region and around Acadie and Diavik. We've got an indicated resource there of over 18 million carats, grading at about 1 carat per ton. We've got 2 projects, Nanook and Nanook North in Nunavut, as well as Keelak and Chidliak, which are contiguous claim groups. Our big focus, though, is on Chidliak. I think most people know where Iqaluit is. We're about 120 kilometers as the crow flies from Iqaluit. We source a lot of our goods and services through Iqaluit and draw a lot of our population of local workers from Iqaluit. The other very important community for us is Pangnirtung. Pangnirtung is a little bit further away, approximately 200 kilometers, give or take. And we primarily draw our employees from Pangnirtung. A quick overview of the project. We've discovered 67 kimberlites to date. We currently believe 7 of these have got indications of economic potential. What you're looking at is diamonds from 6 of those pipes. 6 of them occur within a radius of about 8 kilometers, which is very important as we start to think about the potential economics of any deposit. Our focus in the last 12 months has been on advancing CH6, and I want to talk about our bulk sample. One thing that's important to realize right up front are diamonds are different than other commodities. If you think about copper, the price of copper is the price of copper regardless of where it's sourced from. Each diamond is unique. It's got a unique size, unique color, unique shape, unique clarity, and therefore it has a unique value. So for us to understand the value or potential value of kimberlite pipe like CH6, we've got to take what's called a bulk sample. And in April of 2013, that's what we did. We sourced all of our equipment from Iqaluit, and we transported it overland, approximately 175 kilometers along the Pangnirtung Trail into the site. We then recovered and excavated 500 tons of material, which we then bagged and shipped back down the same way overland, and then to Iqaluit for eventual transportation south. To my knowledge, this is the largest sort of overland mobilization that's ever been based out of Iqaluit, and I got to say it went off almost without a hitch. A lot of that due to the contractors that we sourced up there that supported us, as well as the people of Iqaluit. They were rather patient with us. I acknowledge that our activities did impact on some of their recreational activities, but we did, I think, working with them, overcome any of the challenges we had. A quick shot of an excavator, which I'm sure most people have seen. You can see the kimberlite CH6 comes right to surface. There was about 3 meters of overburden that we had to scrape off first, but the excavator then went ahead after a single blast, and we recovered the 500 tons of kimberlite material. Took about 4 weeks, after which we backfilled that trench, and we've got an ongoing program to monitor the trench for any significant subsidence, which could lead to water issues and drainage issues down the road. The results. We've confirmed that CH6 is one of the highest grade kimberlites in the world. Put it in the Canadian context, you see Chidliak shown in red at 2.78 carats per ton, compared to Divik, which I think everybody's familiar with, Acadie, Snap Lake, and Victor. And you see we positioned that pipe is positioned very, very well. We've recovered 1,124 carats, which we have now bundled up and shipped off to Antwerp, Belgium for valuation. Once we get the valuation back, which we expect sometime in early March, we'll be able to then put that together with the drilling that we've got and get an inferred resource out, which will be 43-101 compliant. We expect that's going to be done in approximately 2 to 3 months following the receipt of the valuation. That is a selection of one batch of CH6 diamonds. All diamonds greater than 9 DTC are about a tenth of a carat. Total weight there is about 220 carats. And the largest stone that you see sort of in the center, lower center part is 9 carats. What's very interesting about this parcel compared to other parcels that we have seen in this sort of run-of-mine type view is the fact that the percentage of colors, yellows, we've got a yellow population developing, potential of clears and whites and off-whites is very high compared to the diamonds you see on the right, which are the grays, browns, generally much lower stones. A lot of diamond deposits, actually, that percentage is reversed. The gem population is much smaller. Another shot of some stones that we've recovered. The big stone there is 9 carats. Just so you know, these stones haven't been washed yet. So once we do the high pressure wash, these stones will even get better looking. I can look at these all day. Another shot of the 9 carat stone and some of the 5 and 6 carat stones that we've recovered in the back. Important here is you can see the clarity and you can see some fantastic shapes of some of the stones. I've been given 5 minutes already, so I'm going to hurry up. Where are we going? Diamond exploration, discovery, and development is a long road. We made the first discovery at Chidliak back in 2008, and here we are 5 years later getting our first bulk sample. and our first indication of the potential economics of a project up there. And it's not over yet. We've got a lot of work to do, and we're planning right now for 2014-2015 seasons. We'll be looking at exploration, and we're also looking at additional bulk sampling of this type of additional pipes that we've got. I know everybody would like to see us put a bit more exact timing on potential development, and we just simply can't at this stage. I will say that we're committed to continue to work with all of our stakeholders and provide them transparency on what our programs are looking like as we develop them and finalize them. It's important to put Chidliak, I think, into the context of the Nunavut mining strategy. In 2007, the government of Nunavut released this document, and it clearly states that responsible mineral development is critical for the economic development of Nunavut. And it recognizes that a strong mineral industry is a foundation for the quality of life of all the residents of Nunavut. Potential returns to stakeholders. My lawyer won't let me talk about Chidliak specifically, but we can look across we can look out west at NWT. There's some of the results that, or some of the benefits that have accrued to NWT from the 3 diamond mines that are currently operating there. And I would argue that they have contributed in no small way to the devolution of NWT. I want to stress the benefits here you're looking at are from the 3 operating mines, but it does start to give us a sense of what the contributions of a development at Chidliak could look like. I've said before, we've committed to Nunavut. To date, we spent over $85 million on our projects up there. Not all of it, obviously, was spent on in Nunavut, but we have supported the local economy through our use of the goods and services that we have up there. Contractors, for example, Nunavut Excavating did a lot of work for us on the bulk sample. And we do draw a lot of employment from both Pangnirtung and Iqaluit, and we will continue to do that, especially as our scale of operations increases. We talk about infrastructure in the north, and I think it's important to establish some context. Infrastructure, the north has been recognized as important to all Canadians for a very long time. The potential's long been realized, but there hasn't been there hasn't been a realization of that potential, I think, in anywhere near an acceptable pace. We all know that part of the challenge is infrastructure. There's no doubt the lack of fundamental infrastructure impacts on the north. It's an expensive place to do business. That's a brutal fact. We can't get around it. But it makes up for this in other ways. There's certainty in the investment process and the governance up there. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity up there. And where responsible mineral development sits within the government of Nunavut strategy is critical. And I think the challenge really is for industry and government to continue to work together to develop some of this fundamental infrastructure. I want to start by talking about education. Everybody, in one way or another, has spoken about education and training in Nunavut. It is a social infrastructure, soft infrastructure, and you can see it's very high on the Premier's priority list. There's been numerous studies that have shown that the state of the education system in Nunavut, and without an education, it's very difficult for the local people to enjoy key roles in either government or industry. And I think this is where industry and government aspirations are extremely well aligned. Because if I've got to bring a lot of workers up from the south, it just increases my cost base, as we all know. And I think the other thing about education and additional training the industry can provide is sustainable. The mine will close. Some mines will be 130 years from now. I don't know if Tom is still here. Some will be shorter than that, but they will close eventually. But let's remember, the education that the people receive and the training they receive is sustainable. We can't take that away from them. And that positions all those people very well for other opportunities that will arise. Another piece of soft infrastructure, I think, is an effective regulatory process. We're in the exploration stage, and that is an illegible map, but it gives you an idea of the complicated relationship map that I currently have to manage. And it's only going to get more complicated as we go into development. It is critical that the investment process be as simple as possible and while ensuring its integrity is maintained. Okay, I'm not asking for shortcuts here. All I'm asking for is help ensuring that there is no duplication of effort. The other thing that I really would like to ask for is to ensure that of all of the regulatory boards that are up there, they're all effectively manned and adequately resourced and operating. so that we can ensure that there is a timely and thorough review of all the applications. Our experience with NERB has been fantastic. They really have gone out of their way to provide us with support that we need. But I will offer that the sort of hours that these people have to work, it is not sustainable. And as more and more developments and more development applications get put before these review boards, the issue is only going to get magnified. Okay, and if the issue gets magnified, we are putting investment at risk up there. And a word to all the industry representatives in here, we have to help. We have a part in this. We've got to make sure that we are regularly communicating with the review boards, okay, that we're giving them line of sight to where we're heading, and that we work with their timelines in our minds and try and work with them on those. The other thing too, we've got to make sure we organize our submissions such they're complete and are organized in such a manner as to facilitate review rather than try and impede it in some way. And power is critical. This is a very topical issue, I know, in Nunavut and especially Iqaluit right now, and I know it's controversial. I just would like to talk to all the stakeholders and make sure that development of hydro remains on the agenda for Nunavut and Iqaluit and all the other communities that are out there. It has been done before. The majority of our equipment we bring up south, like everybody else on the sea lift. A deepwater port in Iqaluit will be a critical piece of hard infrastructure that we are going to need in the future. Again, industry and government aspirations extremely well aligned here. Larger vessel, a better port facility will enable larger vessels, you get economy of scale, and everything is reduced. And instead of paying $32 for a jug of orange juice, maybe we can get that price down to $16 for a jug of orange juice. Of all the hard infrastructure, this is the one that I'm most keen on. We will need road access at some point. Currently we rely on air, and that's fine for the stage of the project, but as we get more advanced, we will need to get some sort of road access. We are looking at permanent road and seasonal road. I was talking earlier about the fact that the risks around a seasonal road in a year like now where there's no snow up there are pretty great, and that's something that we'll have to bear in mind. So just to wrap up, almost on time, Scott. We're really excited about Chikliak. We're very proud of the project. We're very proud that it's located in the Arctic. It brings attention to Arctic development on a global scale. We're very proud to be working with all of the stakeholders we have up there as we advance it forward. We're committed to contributing to the economic development of Nunavut, and we are looking forward to continuing to work with everybody as we move the project forward and realize the tremendous potential both of the resources in Nunavut and the people. Thank you very much.
Those were some pretty good looking diamonds, Tom. Did you bring any with you?
No, they're in Antwerp.
My anniversary's coming up. I was just thinking about that nice 8-carat one. It's a real beauty. In my dreams. So we got time for some questions now. There's a microphone right close to the front here. So just queue up, and I won't waste any of your time. Let's get right to it.
Hi there, guys. Thanks for the presentations. I think they were all very interesting. I'd like to ask a very specific question on the infrastructure aspect. What do you see as the, let's call it 1 to 3 key things that need to be done, either by the private side and or the federal or municipal or local governments to get moving on some of the key infrastructure projects, especially that you mentioned there, Tom, some of the roads and the ports. How do you see the interplay between the private and the public sector, and who does what and how do we get it going?
Look, good question. I mean, we'll talk specifically maybe about the hard infrastructure. I think, again, from my perspective, it is establishing early some of the design criteria of what a development on Baffin or anywhere else may need, and then sitting down with the government officials and seeing where there's good crossover and where we can leverage their needs and our needs. Until we get that going, there's not much going to happen. But we've got to take the requirements of both into play, and there will be opportunities for so-called PPP. There will also be times when they just simply don't make sense.
Second time up today. Wilson Belbin, M&L Director for all of Labrador, Municipalities Newfoundland and Labrador, and this question is for the Alderon Initiative. I know it's after the fact, but as a new M&L Director, having some discussions, was there any discussion with the provincial government in relation to developing roadway, trailway east to a deep water port on the coast of Labrador, and have potential for the future where we have known reserves of offshore oil and gas and economic development? We have the power. And again, it seems like everything is bypassing or going through Labrador. This morning I saw a slide where the boats will bypass the coast of Labrador and go into Quebec. And the rationale was that the mine originated in Quebec, so they required the maximum benefit. And I thought Tom Padden said what exactly I was going to come back to Mike and say, it's too bad that didn't apply to the Upper Churchill. But anyhow, I know it's after the fact, but I'd like to hear some expose on was there much consideration to the future development of Labrador by going east to offload your ore reserves?
To my knowledge, no. The reason being is we're 10 kilometers away from the existing track, which has over 50 million tons of extra capacity. It's used by 30 million tons today. It has a nameplate capacity of 80 million as a minimum. So I think for the advent, and that track is mostly on the Labrador side. It crosses Quebec to get to Sept-Îles. And I think for the overall trough and the area, I think infrastructure, we can't afford to duplicate and multiply infrastructure. I think if there's one thing that we have to recognize is at some point the iron ore, we all wish that all the other players and developers are doing well, because in the end, it's not the Alderon versus IOC versus Wabush versus New Millennium. It's going to be Canada versus Australia, Brazil, Africa, and India. So if we don't get our act together to minimize the issues, to maximize the infrastructure and collaborate and work together, Canada will remain a very small player. We have high quality. You heard this morning the gentleman from Baffinland. I wish we had that type of ore to process, like right from the ground, 65%. We have to beneficiate from 29-30% to the 65%, but it's very sought after by the buyers, and it meets the requirement both of US, not obviously US, but mostly European and Asian steel mills, including Japanese. So our transportation, obviously, our challenge is from Canada to Asia, takes more days than from Australia to Asia. So we have to be competitive on the cost structure side, land costs. And to do this, I think a long answer to your question, that everybody recognizes that I think it wouldn't be a viable solution. On the other side, though, if our product is concentrate, so we don't need to build to do any pelletizing, the customer, that's not what they require. If we were to pelletize, you can expect that we would do this in Labrador. I hope that answers your question.
Hey, nakumit tung napaktu kutwa ka maping pius pung tamani yan. Hay makan ita ko tayo malayas waktu. My name is Tuno Napaktuk. I'm from the municipality of Kutwak. It's a pleasure to be here. My question is, well, first point during Mr. Nixon's presentation, I was going to ask, and you answered during. I was happy to see that the mining companies are investing more in the training. In your slides, you showed that you were getting funding agreements from the governments, and right away it's like, what about the mining companies? And you answered during your presentation, and I would just like to acknowledge that the mining companies that want to work in the north have to do that investment in the local resources, in the local human resources. So I acknowledge that, and I know that's going to improve even more in the coming years, and not just for Nunavik, but also all throughout the north, including Labrador. My question is really, from what I see in my northern Quebec region, I don't know what other regions, Labrador, Nunavik, and NWT, what their challenges are. But one of the challenges in Inuit workforce retention is really the I don't know how to say this properly or nicely, but the challenges that Inuit workforce have towards the other cultures, the non-Inuit, there's a barrier right there. It's one of the comments that come back from those that I've seen work for the Nunavik-based mining companies. What do you recognize that as a challenge, first of all? Also, if you have any programs available for cultural sensitization of not the Inuit, but the non-Inuit who work with the Inuit in your mining companies. And if there are other mining companies throughout the north who recognize that as a challenge as well too, and if they're doing anything about it. I think is a question that can be asked to anyone that's working in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I think that's a very important issue. We didn't have time to talk about that, but this has been a critical and a central piece of the Raglan experience and the Raglan initiatives in the Tamatamani 1 and Tamatamani 2 project. It is also critical in the discussions with all the Inuit and mining company partners as Kautaapikkut. Let me give you an example. This is the ability to provide intercultural training for Inuit, non-Inuit, hourly employees, managers, is absolutely critical, and the experience has been in Raglan that there were a number of initiatives back in the beginning of the Tamatamani project, which was 2008, 2009, and 2010, where there was a training for each and every one of the supervisors and managers, as well as non-Inuit employees and Inuit employees. Significant investment, but an important benefit, and it created a whole new culture, a culture that everybody was trying to achieve, which was a win-win-win, where each one of the cultures had a much better understanding of each other, a much greater respect of each other's history and current context, and a set of skills about how to work together better and solve problems in an ongoing way, and that continues. And so that's a benchmark that's been set by the Raglan mine that is being carried on to the way in which the Kautaapikkut strategy table also has been working and wants to continue to build and improve on it. And in fact, I'm going to ask Mark if you could just speak about the plans at the moment, how to build on the experience from the past, if you don't mind.
I think the importance of intercultural training can't be underestimated. In 2008-2009, at the beginning of Tamatamani, that was a full 3-day course for every single person that worked at Raglan. That wasn't given by a non-Inuit. There was Inuit participation in every single one of those training lessons, sessions. And for anybody who's in the mining business, 3 days to invest in training absolutely everybody on site was a large investment. Without that, we couldn't have gone from 70 to 170. What we've seen is that we're pretty ripe because it's been 6 years, and we plan to do this type of training again this year because of the benefits that we saw through our initiatives in 2008-2009.
Look, in just another perspective, I think it's important. This isn't just a Canadian issue. It's not just a First Nations, quote-unquote, European issue. For people who've worked in South America, for example, getting a group of Argentinians, Brazilians, and Chileans to work together can be quite a challenge at times. I think it's simple. It's education, like these folks are speaking about. I think it's equally important to lay out the company's values and your expectations around this issue and make it crystal clear what those expectations are, and then it's frankly zero tolerance when your expectations are not being met.
Good morning. My name is Klaus. I'm with a renewable energy technology company out of Windsor, Ontario. And I'm impressed by the investment you're showing us and with the multi-decade operation, at least, that you're planning for your mining operations. I also understand that bringing in fossil energies today is deeply ingrained in your business model, which will expose you to the ongoing cost of bringing in diesel fuel, including all future inflation as we can expect it. I would like you to consider the use of available renewable energy, be it water power as was shown here, but also wind power and solar. And when I hear earlier today 140, 150 kilometer wind speed, I hear good or excellent wind resource. You're showing us pictures of the night being all day long. Yes, but you're not showing us the other way around, the day being all day long. I would like you to consider that the rover on Mars is purely solar powered. I would like you to consider that every satellite out in space is purely solar powered. And by the way, space is an even harsher environment than the Arctic. I would like you to also be aware that there is a research station in Antarctica since 8 years being operated by the European Union, purely supported by renewable energy. So I would like you to consider, and given that you're looking at multiple decades of your investment, and you have some of the highest cost of bringing fuel in, the business model of using renewable energy is the best that could be possibly imagined. And there are actually buildings in operation in Europe today that harvest summer solar energy. They put it into large thermal bodies and then heat the building all winter long. It is entirely feasible, and I'm not saying we can switch the lever from one side to the other. However, since you're looking at multiple decades of operating your facilities, I would like you to consider the opportunity of using as much as possible renewable energies, which are the most environmentally friendly thing you can do. The sun comes very, very reliably every summer, whereas your supply ship may or may not. So that's my recommendation to you. And if you ever need a German solar engineer to work with you,
Klaus, maybe I'll just address a few things for what Raglan is doing. Raglan's over the last 3 years has studied, launched extensive studies on wind power, and it ends up being that the area the mine is located is probably the sweetest spot in all of North America for wind power. So this summer we are building a wind turbine. Now while that might not be unique to the north, it's very, very rare to the north. Nunavik does have 3 or 4 wind turbines, and they do exist throughout Norway and other areas. The unique part about what Raglan is doing is rather than using that direct generation of electricity, so we're planning on transforming it into hydrogen. We run, like other remote mines, purely on diesel to run our generators, and we consume upwards of 60 million liters per year. New generation diesel generators can run on either diesel or hydrogen. So the problem is when the wind doesn't blow, then your wind turbine is no good to you. So we're going to transform that into hydrogen. That is unique to the world. And also, throughout 200 kilometers of roadways for Raglan Mine between the actual deposits and the port, all of our communications towers are run by solar. The advantage up there is that the sun in the summer shines a lot longer. We don't have to angle it at 45 degrees like we would down here, and also with a combination of very small wind power. So we haven't had a diesel generator for any of our communications towers in over 10 years.
If I may add, from an Alderon perspective, obviously we will be a big user of electrical power. We are not a major user of diesel. The only thing basically that might run on diesel are the trucks, the shovels, the drills, and this equipment, our neighbors have electric powered equipment. So obviously we're trying, and we have to abide, and I think it's a good thing, by the, I can't recall the name, but the new agreement, the worldwide agreement on the emissions and everything. So everybody's going to have to account for that and obviously find solutions to have the least footprint. But from our perspective, it's electrical that's going to be the electric power for most of the stuff. If we ever move to pelletization, then there's going to be an issue with the source, but we're not there at all at the moment.
Good morning. This is a great opportunity to learn. My name is Jean-Claude Remy. I work for Equinor, Business Development Manager. Building a little bit on Klaus on sustainability and renewable energy, and in our case, using water to accomplish that. Going after business, new business is always challenging, and meeting engineers and so on and so forth. And I'm personally a little bit new in this market, but building on what some of my co-workers who've been involved more for a few years now, one of the challenges that we find is being able to get out there, pass on the message, the education, the knowledge, and that we believe, not just our company, a whole lot of other companies and people could bring a lot to the table for up north. And I don't want to seem to whine here, but the Great North is particularly challenging in having to find the right people and meeting them and getting the information there. I'm not even talking about closing the sale, just getting, it's always challenging, but you guys, it's a lot more, and it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, and that's fine, that's part of doing business. But I see here in the comments an intent to get organized, not doubling up on energy, on time, people, and so on and so forth. And I just want to comment that right now there's a lot of that going on because there doesn't seem to be more normal, like we'll find in South, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, so on and so forth, channels to access and bring that to the table. And that's strictly my comment on that, and I wanted that to be food for thought, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We are getting short on time, so if there are further questions, if you could just keep them brief.
Just two quick comments. I'm a retired employee of the Northwest Company, but spent 43 years in the north of Canada, so I've seen a few things. A couple of comments here. I commend you on the training opportunities you see and the work that you're putting into it. But to look for 4,000 employees out of Nunavik is commendable. The challenge I see in that is, should you be successful, and I hope you are, and the cross-cultural things are all important, but if you took that many people out of 12,000 of the population, how does the communities themselves sustain their services? It's something to think about. And the other one is, I've done a lot of sea lifts, a lot of them by these hands. So to see a deep water port in a halibut is something that will get my full vote. Thank you.
If I could, I'd just like to make a quick comment about the 4,000 jobs. And the idea is, in the Kautaapikkut strategy table objectives, the strategic objectives, were to maximize employment as much as possible over the next 5, 10, 15, even 20 years. There are it's projected that there would be 4,000 up to, or something in the order of 4,000 jobs created in the next 5 or 10 years. We don't know whether it's going to be possible to find 4,000 Inuit to do that. We want to maximize that. But the other thing that's I think really important is that there's already a very significant population in Nunavik who are unemployed or underemployed at this point. And we want to find a way to help them to be part of that if it's possible. That's number one. Number two, that the population is now, and as you know, in Nunavik and Nunavut and in northern Labrador, huge numbers of youth that are part of the population and huge numbers of people that are being born every year, so that the population, for those people who are, at this point, close to 60% of the population is under 20. So that there are huge opportunities for new jobs for people coming into the labor force or those that are not there now. So that I think the issue of services not being able to be provided by people who are currently in the labor force, I don't think that's a major issue at this point, and I think as the population continues to increase, it may not be so much an issue either. Now let's hope that we can even come somewhat close to 4,000. I think that's the goal of Kautaapikkut, but we need to see how we're going to be able to build and grow over that period of time. But thanks very much for the questions. Good question. Thank you.
This has been an excellent session. Please join me in thanking these three presenters for their excellent presentations. I'd like to thank our project sponsors as well, Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency and Aboriginal Affairs in Northern Development Canada. If you like, after the session, you can come forward and mob the presenters, as has been happening with previous presentations. We have a few gifts here as well that I'll be handing out from our sponsors. Thank you very much.